Good evening, race fans, and welcome into round number 2 of the Enigma Truck Racing Series, season number 1 for this group's second ever race they have been putting on. And a couple of weeks ago, these drivers conquered the high banks of Daytona for round number 1 of the season, and now they've traveled their way on over to Indianapolis for something entirely different. Tonight, drivers will be taking on the Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park, going from a track that is a little under 2.5 miles in length to a track that is only, call it about a little under 7/10 of a mile. Of course, 1.1 kilometers for those of you who use the metric system. So tonight, we are taking these trucks short track racing. And of course, Lucas Oil is a track that's had a pretty solid history with the Truck Series in the real world as well. This track has hosted NASCAR Truck Series races every year from 1995 to 2011, and then they took a little bit of a hiatus until they made their return last year for the first round of the Truck Series playoffs. And again, it will be returning in the Truck Series schedule this year later on in the season. But for tonight, only going to be the second ever round for the Enigma Truck Racing Series, and I think that it is bound to be quite a race. I said, drivers are starting to make their way on down to the starting grid, so how about we go take a look down there and see how things are shaking up here this evening. Starting out on the pole of tonight's event here, that's going to be the number 12 of Kenny Tripp for Fast Track Motorsports. It's outside going to be that number 5 Casey's General Store Chevrolet of Ross Phillips. Third place can go back to the 85 of Brandon Kiger with the Wednesday night Pro American Late Model Series champion. That's the 27 of Gerard Lawrence. Fifth place can go back to the 29 of Kevin Church for KC Racing, with the 89 of Justin Phipps rolling off sixth. Seventh place gonna go back to that 69 machine. That is gonna be Larry Dickerson in the Angelman Syndrome Foundation Chevy, rolling it off P number 7. Eighth place gonna go back to our first race's winner. That is the Crew Racing Chevy of Michael McElroy. Ninth place going to be rolling off for Fastlane Motorsports, the number 6 of Brent Max. 10th place going to go back to that 66. That is Mr. Johnny B starting back there with the 82 of Zach Scare starting back in P11. Then looking like rounding out this field here tonight, that is going to be the 37 of Art Hendren. And take a look down, it does look like Dwayne McMahon in that 87 is registered for the race. Looks like we might be having a little bit of an issue with the timing and scoring. Yeah, we're getting word here. Zach Scare is not in attendance, so that is going to be having Dwayne McMahon in the 87 starting in P number 11, not Zach Scare. So 12 drivers making the field here this evening for round number 2 of the Enigma Truck Racing Series. 150 laps going to be the distance here tonight. Pit stops going to be guaranteed more or less. These drivers do not have the fuel necessary to make it to the end unless they end up with a lot of cautions. And judging by the fact that they managed to get through Daytona with surprisingly little incident, I have no doubt that they will be getting through this race pretty dang cleanly tonight as well. I said, iRacing.com pace car is off. It's time to get this show on the road 150 laps. Kenny Tripp and Ross Phillips on row number 1. Brandon Kiger, Gerard Lawrence, row number 2. And as we cross the line into the Geico restart zone, not a sponsor, green flag is up in the air, and we are rolling down into turn number 1. Ross Phillips up on that outside line, managing to keep pace side by side with our race leader. And Phillips actually is going to get the advantage heading into 3 and 4 That said, Tripp's looking really low in that easy rental number 12, and he's going to have to fall back and cycle in behind Phillips. IRP, one of the tracks where the outside line tends to prevail, but you got to be careful with it, because if you rely on the outside line too much, you can end up in the outside wall, and it looks like that's exactly what happened to Art Hendren there, and it looks like we might have also had trouble for Brent Mex as well. No caution going to be coming out for either of these drivers. Everyone is still rolling in the right direction, but just like that, right off the bat, two drivers having a little bit of trouble, getting a little bit too high in these corners, getting into those marbles and losing control of their trucks just a little bit. Still long race to go. That is not game over for Mex or Hendren here. And our race leader now doing it as well. That's Tripp up into the outside wall, heading down into turn number 1. Now these drivers did get at least 30 minutes of practice under their belts before heading into tonight's event. But that does not make this track any less difficult, as Phillips now going to tag the outside wall and corner exit. These trucks might as well be boats out here on the speedway here tonight, and you can see all these drivers having a little bit of handling issues out there. It's just a combination of a bit of a tricky track with a bit of a tricky vehicle out here, and again, more drivers fishtailing it a little bit on corner exit. Thankfully, none of these trucks have trailers attached to them, or else we could have some really serious issues here tonight. 6 laps in the books though, and for the most part, looks like everyone is getting things sorted out right now. I said, well, we have just a moment. It does look like the truck actually has footage of what happened to Mex and Hendren on that lap number 1 incident. So let's take a real quick look back and see if we can't see what happened to those two drivers. Just really quickly. Looking back at that unsponsored number 37, Chevy just gets loose off the corner, ends up in the grass, and looking on over at Brent Mex, looks like it is the same story. Two drivers making two mistakes in one corner, entirely independent of each other, but no caution going to come out for that incident back on lap number 2. Everyone's still got it rolling. That leaves Mex with a 5-second gap behind the rest of the field, and Hendren another 3 seconds on that. So these two drivers gonna be hoping for a caution to come out sooner or later to get them caught back up, or at least to have a bit of fortune when it comes on down to making the pit cycles work out. Currently, most improved driver, only 10 laps in the books, but as we cross lap number 10, most improved driver here tonight, that's the 87 of Mr. Dwayne McMahon, the rookie driver who made his first ever Truck Series start, not just in the league, but as a whole, his first ever time in a NASCAR truck last week back at Daytona. McMahon currently up 3 positions from where he qualified, and getting around Johnny B up there on the high side is going to make it position number 4 under the belt of that rookie driver. And I'll tell you what, for someone who insists that he has never driven a truck before, he is having a pretty solid evening here tonight. It looks like trouble. Art Hendren, a pretty decent chunk of damage on the nose of that number 37. That was not there from his lap 2 incident. This looked like something else happened to that number 37 to add that damage onto the hood. It sounds like, again, someone having trouble further up in the field. Another driver bouncing off the outside wall. Not the first time we've heard it here tonight, and definitely not the last. Taking the zoom out camera here, not entirely sure who it is that's having those impacts against the outside wall, but that is going to add up. And eventually they're going to start having some handling issues if they continue to damage the right side of the truck like that. That said, looks like this is a 13-car race after all. Zach Scare in that 82 has made his way out onto the speedway, currently being scored 10 laps down. So it looks like might have had a little bit of mechanical issues under the hood of that 82, had to do a little bit of extra work on it before they could get it rolling out on the speedway. And that's honestly pretty unfortunate to see, because Scare had the exact same story last weekend at Daytona. Had a bit of technical issues under the hood of that truck, and he had to roll off the grid from pit lane about 5 laps down from the rest of the field. But last week, Scare managed to bring it home P number 2 after starting the race in last place from technical issues. So who knows, we might just have to see if that 82 manages to pull off another amazing feat and get maybe even another podium to his name. A little bit further up in the field, looking at that Mountain Dew Chevrolet, that is Justin Phipps in the middle of a bit of a 4-car battle here. Currently, the battle for the 5th position, Phipps being scored back in 6th here. All 4 of these cars under a little bit of a gap between Phipps and Dickerson, and Phipps actually going to look down to the inside, see if he can't make a move on Church. Looks like the source is going to say, no, that's not going to work. That is, until he ends up in the outside wall. That's going to bring out the first caution of the evening, just like that. Phipps sending it into the corner, maybe a little bit faster than he was anticipating to be. First caution out on the speedway. 19 laps into tonight's event. Still 130 left to go. Let's see if we can't take a look back here and get a look at what happened to that number 89 machine to bring out that yellow flag. Looking back, coming down into turn number 4, looks like Phipps sent it into the corner, maybe a little bit harder than he was intending, maybe not expecting that truck in front of him to be as slow as they were. See if we can't get a better look at this here real quick. There we go. Let's break out slow-mo cam here really quick. Into the back of the 29, you can see him slam on the brake, and that locks up the rear tires and just sends him spinning. And not really anywhere that 69 machine could have gone. That's Larry Dickerson getting a bit of contact, and also the 83 of Michael McElroy, last week's winner, getting involved there. So at least 3 trucks with damage, maybe make that 4, because you got the 69. That's Larry Dickerson down there on pit lane as well, and Michael McElroy. Also, some heavy damage on the right side of that number 83. You can barely even tell what number he's driving. But he's going to bring it out on the speedway. He's decided, you know what? I think the truck is still drivable. And honestly, having your truck still be drivable, that is half the battle here on the speedway, especially here at these short tracks. Contact is bound to be inevitable. This track, not quite the smallest that these trucks are visiting here this season, but it is pretty darn close to it. Next week, we will be heading to the Texas Motor Speedway, one of the 1.5 mile intermediate tracks. So next week, we're going to give these trucks a little bit of breathing room again, get away of the claustrophobicness that is the Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park. After that, going to be heading to Michigan, one of the longer tracks on the schedule. But then, round number 5, heading to Martinsville, a track that is even more narrow than this one. That is going to be a very tricky race for these drivers. But for now, still got to figure out just how they want these next, call it, about 128 laps to play out. Still single file around the speedway, so we do still have at least one more lap under caution. We'll have to see if we decide to turn out the pace truck lights when we cross the line here. And sure enough, lights out on the iRacing.com pace truck. We will be going green flag racing next time by Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger, making up the front row of this race. You can't tell here tonight from the difference in the two of their paint schemes. One of them driving the easy rental entry, the other one driving the Busch Beer number 85. But they are teammates in the Pro American Late Model Series, so then we're going to have to keep an eye on these two and see if those team orders come into effect here at all this evening, or if they are out for themselves here on Sunday nights. That said, iRacing.com pace truck is off. We are going to be going green flag racing once again. And into the Geico restart zone we go. Green flag up in the air. And Tripp is going to get off to a pretty handy lead on that restart side by side for P number 2. That's Phillips and Kiger there. Side by side, 4 rows deep for position, but everyone pretty quickly single files it up. They've come to realize maybe we need to be a little bit more patient here this evening. Side by side a bit further back, that is Church, and looks like Lawrence getting a bit loose coming out of turn number 4. They're side by side, and it looks like now Dickerson's getting involved in this battle. That 29 of Church is clearing him pretty easily. But for the most part, the low line is tricky here. Not exactly where you want to be. It is really difficult to get the momentum off the corner that you need when you go down there. There's just so little banking on this speedway. It's virtually flat, but not quite. There is a little bit of banking here for these drivers to work with, but it is so subtle that it might as well be flat here tonight at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Still looking at the battle down here for the 5th position, and Lawrence gets up into the outside wall. Lawrence going to lose a position just like that, and now McMahon's going to be looking in there and seeing if he can't snag another spot. McMahon up 6 positions from where he qualified in just 27 laps in that unsponsored Toyota. A driver that has been making a whole lot of improvement out here in the series. A driver that we all kind of came to the decision last week at Daytona that we need to keep an eye on his career, see how he manages to make the truck work for him this season. And I'd say he's doing a pretty dang good job so far. Looks like Tripp might have had a little bit of trouble though. Not looking like there's much damage on the side of that number 12 machine, but there is a whole nearly 1.5 second gap between himself and our race leader of Ross Phillips. Phillips, he is completely broken away from the rest of the pack in that number 5 machine. And now for him, it's just a bit of Sunday evening cruising until it's time to pit, where a yellow comes out and brings the rest of the field back up to him. But right now, he is setting some pretty darn fast lap times here tonight. A little bit further back, this is the battle for 5th between, looks like Dickerson and Kiger. So this is actually the battle for 4th here. Side by side coming out of turn number 2. Dickerson down on the low line, Kiger up high. And the story still, for the most part, seems to be the same, that the higher line just has better momentum off the corner. So Dickerson, he's got his work cut out for him here, trying to make this pass stick. Getting all the way down to the apron in that Angelman Syndrome entry. But it's just not enough. Certainly not this early into the race. Maybe later on, once the track gets rubbered in a bit more, marbles start to build up on the high line, we could see the low line actually come into play here. But for the time being, it looks like just staying up high is the way to go, because Dickerson, he's trying and he's trying again, but he can't make the truck stick the way that he needs it to in order to execute the pass on that number 85. Of course, he's dealing with Brandon Kiger. Kiger, a driver that was contending for the championship of the Wednesday Night Short Track League earlier this week. So he is having to deal with a driver that knows how to wheel cars around these short tracks. But I'll tell you what, the NASCAR trucks are an entirely different beast from a late model. So does look like that at least some of the experience does apply out here in the Enigma Truck Racing Series, but still very different beasts that these drivers are having to deal with. But Dickerson's going to make the pass in that 69. Will he be able to hold on to it, though? Sure enough, he's going to clear Kiger for the 4th position. That's going to bump him up 3 positions from where he qualified. Now Kiger has to go on the offensive if he wants to get back up into the top 4, but at least he's got a bit of breathing room, because it's a full second back between himself and Gerard Lawrence, that number 27. Lawrence was not able to attend last week at Daytona, so this is Lawrence's first start here in the Enigma Truck Racing Series, but he is a champion. He has a trophy to his name for his ability to wheel and deal on the short tracks, and I believe IRP is actually a track that he went to in that very season, so he already has a decent amount of prior experience here, but currently he's running back in the 6th spot. He is outside looking in on a top 5 finish in that Snap-on Chevrolet. A little bit further back in the field, that all-black 37, Art Hendren and Michael McElroy, currently the closest battle on the speedway between 2 drivers that have been involved in incidents so far this race. A little bit further back, Mr. Johnny B is starting to look his way into this battle as well, but he is about half of a second back, so he's got some gaining he needs to do if he wants to get up in here, but just like that, he's gained it pretty handily. Looks like Art Hendren might have had a little bit of trouble that made him fall back just a bit, because now, yeah, Art Hendren is losing speed pretty considerably, because Johnny B got around him in that 66 without much of an issue at all, and he's still falling back in that number 37 entry. That said, oh, trouble again for the 37. Another hard impact with the outside wall. He's still got it rolling, but you can start to see there's damage accumulating on that right front that is going to be making the handling of the 37 getting just worse and worse with every single impact. But it looks like he's just going to try and stick it out until it becomes time for pit cycles, and then maybe he can see if he's able to get any of it repaired. That said, having to pull on down low, because that is Zach Scare getting around him. That is Scare still 9 laps down, but studying some very considerable lap times in that 83. Now it looks like Brent Mex just behind him in the 6, also scraping the outside wall just a bit. Looks like darn near every single truck out here on this speedway has accumulated right side damage in some capacity. And I'll tell you what, race fans, we're not even at Darlington. Lucas Oil doesn't have any sort of special stripes to its name, but I'll tell you what, these trucks are hitting the outside wall, dare I say, just as much, if not more, than they would be at the Darlington Raceway. Hedren really having some handling issues on that number 37. That's going to allow Brent Mex to catch up to him. Brent Mex closing the distance and getting around him without much trouble at all in that number 6. Hendren continuing to fall further and further back, and a little bit of contact there between Hendren and our race leader. That is Phillips telling these lap cars they need to get out of his way. He has a race to be winning here. Getting around Hendren pretty handily, and now he's having to get around that 6 of Brent Mex. Gonna be taking it down low, and Brent Mex keeping it on up high, and everything looking pretty good for our race leader of Phillips. And that leaves Kenny Tripp an entire 4 seconds back. So Tripp has not even caught up to Hendren yet to start trying to negotiate this lap traffic. He's got a whole lot of work left here to try and catch up to our race leaders. And Zach Scare is going to be coming down pit lane. Scare doesn't look like there's any damage on that 82. We're going to have to wait and see until he comes back around. Yeah, no damage on that 82 at all, but he's going to be bringing it down to pit lane. An unplanned pit stop from the looks of things for that number 82. But who knows? Maybe he's just on a strategy we don't... Never mind. Oh, nope. Pulling a fast one on us for just a second there. I thought Scare was going to be retiring from the race, but he was just having a little bit of a connection issue. Either way, Zach Scare going to be the first driver down to pit lane. Going to be trying to see if maybe he can't make a little bit of round back on pit strategy. Now, some of these trucks did come down pit lane under that initial caution all the way back on lap 19. So the short pitters, they have come down pit lane already, but Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger, Gerard Lawrence, all trucks that still have not come down pit lane. So technically speaking, we are still in the middle of a pit cycle here. But once those three come down, that will shake things up just a bit, and that should make the running order a little bit clearer. Once things cycle back through, I don't think that's going to give Mex, Hendren, or Phipps their laps back. They are definitely a lap down on pace and not on their pit strategies here. But if a caution were to come out, there are 3 lucky dogs, so Mex and Hendren would be put back on the lead lap, and Phipps would be given one of his laps back. He would not be put back on the lead lap without a second caution, though. 52 laps in the books, though. We are officially a third of the way through this race, and Art Hendren coming on down to pit lane now. Look at lap times, though. A little bit faster than the Truck Series record in the real world, which is a little bit to be expected on a racing simulator. There's a whole lot less danger of, actually dying out here in these virtual races. So these drivers are able to push their trucks just a tiny bit harder than they would be in the real world. But if my records are correct, Greg Biffle set the lap record in a NASCAR truck here in 1999 with a 22.841. Last time by, everyone was in the 23 seconds range, but currently Ross Phillips, our race leader, who has set the best lap of the race, has set a 22.5, so about a tenth or so faster than the real world track record, which, take that with a grain of salt, because this is a simulator, but that is how the stats are showing right now. Ross Phillips, 22.5 as his best lap. He is the only driver, it looks like, to set a time in the 22.5 range, it looks like. Let's double check that. That's actually not the case. Art Hendren, the driver all the way back here, 5 laps down, but involved in 2 separate incidents here this evening, has also set a lap in the 22.5 range. Art Hendren is currently holding the second fastest lap time of this entire race, all the way back there in the 12th position. So it just goes to show, sometimes it's the underdogs that are setting the records. Art Hendren, the little truck that could here this evening. A little bit further up the field, though, this is the battle for third. Kevin Church trying his best to hold on to that final podium position, but Larry Dickerson not going to be making it easy for him in that number 69, especially as they start to come up on lapped traffic here. Phipps in that 89, that Mountain Dew truck going to be going up high, and he's going to slam on the brakes. He is going to pull the parachute out and let these lead lap cars by. He has no interest in getting involved with them whatsoever. So that's going to put Phipps another lap down, and Johnny B also now going down a lap. So 8 cars left on the lead lap here this evening. The last driver on the lead lap, that's the 83. That is Michael McElroy, the winner of the first round back at the Daytona International Speedway. Now running out here in a little bit of a bubble all by himself. Cars behind him all a lap down, and he's going to scrape the outside wall there. That 83 truck maybe not handling the way he wants it to be. And he's got a whole roughly 7 seconds between himself and the rest of the lead lap trucks. So he has his work cut out for him in that 83. That said, he is the only truck on the speedway that is on the lead lap that has pit twice now. So running a little bit of a different strategy than the rest of the drivers, it looks like. But that said, it may not necessarily be what he needs, because that second pit stop was back on lap 19 under that yellow. So his first pit stop was even sooner than that. And since he was involved in the caution, it's entirely possible that second pit stop was just to repair damage. So things not looking super great for McElroy, but we've still got a long way left to go in this race for things to maybe turn back around in his favor. Further up in the field, this is the battle for 5th. Brandon Kiger holding on to that spot, but Dwayne McMahon, the driver that is now up 7 positions from where he qualified, the rookie here in the NASCAR trucks. And Art Hendren having a little bit of trouble just behind him. Not quite sure what that was, but Hendren, his truck just snapped on him coming out of turn number 4. That didn't even look like a spin. That looked straight up like someone grabbed his wheel and yanked it to the side. Not entirely sure what's going on under the hood of that number 37, but does not look particularly good here tonight. Up here to the battle for 5th between Kiger and McMahon. These two trucks both running numbers in the 80s. And I believe McMahon is actually the only Toyota out here in the field here this evening. This race pretty much dominated entirely by Chevys here tonight. Taking a look at our manufacturers here, we do have 2 Toyotas and Michael McElroy, the last truck on the lead lap, the lone Ford in the field. Of course, as we covered back in Daytona here on the iRacing.com simulator, it is just purely cosmetic differences between the manufacturers. These do not affect how the trucks handle at all. So it looks like we just have a whole lot of Chevrolet fans out here on the speedway, but side by side coming down out of turn number 2, and Art Hendren is off the speedway. He's got it rolling again though, so it doesn't look like there's going to be a caution. But Art Hendren again ending up on the infield grass and having more damage to the front end of that truck. And sure enough, Dwayne McMahon's going to make the pass. Dwayne McMahon started all the way back in 12th, and he is now up inside of the top 5 in that unsponsored Toyota Tundra. What a race that rookie driver is having here tonight. That said, he's not out of the doghouse yet. He has to make up 11 seconds if he wants to battle for 4th place. That is not going to be easy. Still a little over halfway left in this race. All these trucks more than likely going to be having to come down pit lane yet again, so it's not impossible. But 11 seconds, that is a very big ask, especially at a track where the lap times are only a little bit over 22 seconds. So he's pretty much half a speedway away from that 69 of Larry Dickerson. And Dickerson involved in a little bit of a battle of his own, trying to catch up to that number 29 of Kevin Church, trying to find a way into the top 3 of this race. A little bit loose off the corner, and just behind them is Michael McElroy. So McElroy's down a lap 2. That's going to have Lawrence being the last truck on the lead lap here. I'd imagine a lot of these drivers are starting to really hope for a caution here this evening, get those lucky dog positions, get back up on the lead lap, and have another shot at things. Especially as we near the last halfway point, and there's trouble. Something just went severely wrong. I don't think it's Art Hendren. We're not having any yellow out on the speedway, but we did just hear what sounded like a pretty significant mechanical failure. But I'm looking around the speedway, and I'm not seeing any trucks with damage, so I'm not entirely sure what that was. And we're not getting any reports from race control of incidents. So I'm not entirely sure what that was we were hearing, but Dickerson is closing the gap on Kevin Church. He's losing the ground just a little bit in turns 3 and 4. He's going down low, trying to see if he can't make something work down there. But this time he's decided against that. This time he's going way up high to the outside wall. Really trying to use every ounce of this speedway to just make any sort of ground up on that 29. After all, it's like they generally say, if you are not, or if you're following in the tire treads of the truck in front of you, then you are not passing the truck in front of you. And Dickerson's really putting that ideology to work here. He is trying every single line that he can think up to try and get around that 29. A little bit of a tap against the outside wall there, not doing him any favors here this evening. McElroy coming down pit lane though. McElroy is going to be the next truck down, and he's going to now be making his 3rd pit stop. Johnny B coming down right behind, so it looks like our cycle of green flag pit stops is getting ready to come out on the speedway. 77 laps in the books, so we are officially past the halfway point here. Call it about 72 laps left around this speedway. And right now, everyone is strung out by over a second from each other, except for Dickerson and Church. These two trucks, the 29 and 69, the closest battle on the speedway. Trucks starting to make their way back out onto the speedway now. McElroy's back out. Phipps is back out. McElroy's going to be losing some positions, though. That pit lane did put him all the way back to the back of that group of cars that are being scored 2 laps down. Johnny B might be having some trouble, though. Johnny B has now been on pit lane for, call it, a little over a minute and 5 seconds. So trouble for Johnny B down there on pit lane. That's going to be putting Johnny B 4 laps down now. So that is a very big deficit for that 66 to try and make up in these remaining 70 laps. Up in the front of the race, Ross Phillips, he has led basically every single lap, and now he has a pretty good lead, but he's going to be coming on down to pit lane. Phillips has decided that it is time to make his pit stop happen. Whether or not it works out for him, we're going to have to wait and see. He is going to be the first driver that is actually out on the lead lap to be making his pit stop. Dwayne McMahon going to be the second one coming down just behind. McMahon maybe trying to see what the race leader is doing and imitate it just a little bit. This 87 machine, he is still learning after all. He has gained 8 positions from where he started, but still only been driving the truck for 2 weeks. Looks like it's going to be a 4-tire stop for the 87. He's going to be losing a couple of positions down here on pit lane. And we're getting it rolling here again. Ross Phillips back out on the speedway. Everyone else down on pit lane still, so Phillips may be getting back up into the pit, or back up into the lead of this race. Sure enough, Dickerson is just now coming down on the pit lane, so Phillips is back up into the lead of this race, and he has a 5, now 6, now 7 second gap on anyone else in the field. So Phillips pretty comfortably getting back in control of this event without much to worry about. 3 wide back in the back. Brandon Kiger and Gerard Lawrence, these two trucks battling for position. McMahon was actually, he's involved in this battle as well. These 3 trucks all came off of pit road on roughly the same time, and now we have a pretty crazy battle for 5th. For a second there, I thought that maybe McMahon was a lap down and he was just going to let these two by. And McMahon's trouble. The rookie driver down into the inside wall. And trouble again. There is something not going right under the hood of that number 87. No caution going to be coming out. He's still got the truck rolling. Nothing is blocking the track. No debris out on the speedway. We are keeping it green. But what a tragic display for that rookie driver, that number 87 machine. Let's see if we can't take a quick look back here and see what exactly happened to him there, because that looked like it just came entirely out of nowhere. The truck just snapped on, he slams on the brakes, he locks it down, he gets it rolling again, and starts getting back up to speed, and it just does it again. So not doing the left front any favors on that number 87 machine. That is going to bump him back a couple of positions, but ultimately, he still is in this race. He still has the truck pointed forward, and sometimes that is half the battle. He's being scored all the way back to the 10th position now, no. He was originally up in the top 5. Now he's on the bubble for even being in the top 10 here tonight. Brandon Kiger and Gerard Lawrence still duking it out just as they have done time and time again in the Wednesday Night Late Model Series. Now they are here in the Enigma Truck Racing Series, duking it out like they always have on the short tracks, but in an entirely different beast of a vehicle. Both drivers out here in Chevrolets. Brandon Kiger in that 85 Busch Beer, the bright orange entry. Lawrence driving similar colors to his late model, that black and teal 27. Tonight, bringing out the Snap-on sponsor rather than his regular El Sasso race engine sponsors. Maybe just hasn't gotten them on board for the trucks here tonight. But I'll tell you what, he still has a pretty dang distinct truck out there here tonight. And he's currently on the outside, looking in to the top 5. Side by side, further back in the back, Brent Max, Wayne McMahon duking it out for the 8th position. McMahon down on the low side in that number 87, and sure enough, he is going to clear Brent Max, so it does look like maybe after 92 laps, the inside line has gotten a little bit more grip, the grip that they need to actually be making passes down there. And sure enough, you can see some marbling forming up high, so it does look like maybe the high line is starting to get a little bit more treacherous. Evidently not all that treacherous, because these drivers are still using it without too much of a concern. But it could start getting a little bit sketchy up there, especially as we break into the final 50 laps of tonight's event. Brandon Kiger, he is being scored a lap down still, but he is also one of the few drivers on the speedway that has only come down pit lane a single time. Taking a look down at these drivers' pit strategies here, some very different strategies on display. Some drivers only on one stop. Kenny Tripp has not pit since lap 82. That was when he made his first stop of the evening. Most of the rest of the field all made their first stops under the yellow on lap 19, but then it's kind of anyone's game as for where they decide to make their stops under the green flag. For the most part, roughly in the 80 lap range, but McElroy came back down a little early back on lap 75, and Max even earlier coming down on lap number 63. Of course, that's going to be shaking up their tire usage just a bit. I know most of the drivers, it looks like, did do 4 tire stops under their last stop, so these stint links, different amounts of wear on their tires. Of course, you can adjust your tire wear a pretty decent bit just by your driving style, but ultimately, having a 20 lap difference on your set of tires can be a pretty big deal when it comes into the longer runs of these races. So a little bit of a difference in the pit strategy here. In that 85, that's Brandon Kiger up into the outside wall. Sure enough, looks like he got those right side tires up into the marbles. And when you get up there, well, I'll tell you what, race fans, they are called marbles for a reason. Just a little bit slippery, a little bit slidey, and that truck just does not want to turn when you are up there. There's just no traction when you have that stuff beneath you. Handling a bit better there. Not really any issue for the number 85. 4 drivers left on the lead lap right now. Ross Phillips, our race leader, with a 2.5 second lead. A little bit of a gap back to Kenny Tripp, Kevin Church, and Larry Dickerson. The last 4 drivers on the lead laps here. And all 4 of them have come down pit lane on lap 82. So everyone in your top 4, for the most part, on the same strategy, with the exception of Kenny Tripp, who is not stopped on that initial yellow. So Tripp is bound to have a little bit less fuel in the tank compared to the other drivers remaining on the lead lap here. Art Hendren, he has been down on pit lane for 12, nearly 13 minutes now. And despite that, he is still holding on to the record of now 3rd fastest truck on the speedway in terms of best lap time. Looks like Gerard Lawrence has bumped him out of P number 2. Gerard Lawrence had a 22.53 just a couple of laps ago, right after he came out of pits on those brand new Goodyear tires. And Ross Phillips, our race leader, still holding on to the fastest lap with a 22.5 flat. And it looks like McElroy's down on pit lane, and McElroy might have actually retired from the event. We cannot get a camera feed on McElroy. Let's bust out the pit lane camera real quick. It does not look like McElroy is down there on pit lane. We're not getting word from race control that he took the tow, so McElroy might actually be retiring from tonight's event. Either that or he is having some serious connection problems. But that's going to be moving that number 83 machine out of the top 10 here tonight, unless he can get it out here rolling again. And that's going to leave Johnny B, the last car out on the speedway, the only truck currently 3 laps down in that red and gray number 6, the Flaming Karma paint shop entry. But a top 10 is still a top 10. He's not 11th, 12th, or 13th, so he still does have that going for them. That is better than nothing in that number 66 machine, but a long way to go if he wants to get up into the battle for some higher spots here tonight. That said, there's only 4 cars on the lead lap, so could be a bit less of a challenge to make some spots than it would be otherwise, but he still has to get up at least on the lap of Mex and Phipps so that he can get up onto the lap of everyone else. But of course, that's going to be, looks like, at least 3 cautions to get Johnny B back onto the lead lap. His first caution, that'll put Kiger, Lawrence, and McMahon back on the lead lap. A second caution would give Mex, Phipps, and Johnny B a lap back. And then a third caution, no, it would actually need to be 4 cautions for Johnny B to get back on the lead lap. So, I mean, there's 40 laps left. It's entirely possible there could be 4 cautions in these next 40 laps. Am I banking on it? Not at all, because right now every single truck on the speedway is more than a second apart from each other. So I really don't think the chances of there being 4 cautions to get Johnny B back on the lead lap is very good. But we have seen stranger things out here, especially at these late night short track races. There is always a big element of chaos here, and really anything could go wrong in these next 40 laps for someone. Ross Phillips still in the lead of this race. He does not have a single care in the world right now. You can see that 12 of Kenny Tripp, a second and a half behind him. That is a pretty considerable amount of room. Call it pretty much an entire corner behind that number 5 truck that he needs to somehow make up in these next 39 laps. Gonna be a long way to go around this speedway for him to try and make that up in that easy rental Toyota. And just behind him, that's Brandon Kiger, but Brandon Kiger, of course, being scored a lap down right now. Kiger is the first truck on the lead lap, though, so if a caution were to come out, Kiger would be much back into this thing. And driver down on the pit lane, that is the Mountain Dew 89 Chevrolet of Justin Phipps, and he has some pretty heavy damage on that 89 machine. All 4 faces of that truck are bent and scraped. Phipps going to be taking on down to pit lane, but he is taking tires. Phipps is not calling it here tonight. He is putting, looks like 4 brand new Goodyear Eagles on that Chevy Silverado, and he's going to be getting back out of there. 114 laps in the books. And he's going to be coming out on the speedway 4 laps down now. So that is going to be a spot for Johnny B. Johnny B is up a spot from where he qualified now in that 66. Things looking up for the driver out of North Branford. The gap is closing for the lead, though. Tripp is actually catching up to Ross Phillips. We could be seeing Ross Phillips planning to come back down to pit lane here. But right now, Tripp is closing that gap pretty considerably quickly. He's just gained a 1/10 of a second in half of the back straightaway. His work not going to be easy for him, but he is gaining ground on Phillips like crazy. Last time by, he set a lap nearly 3/10 of a second faster than Phillips last time by. So Phillips has either gone into full save mode here tonight, trying to hit a fuel number that he evidently is not happy with right now, or he has just absolutely completely used all of the good off those Goodyear tires. But his job just got a little bit easier because Tripp's going to have a hard impact with the outside wall in that number 12. That's going to slow him down. And he very nearly got into the marbles there. That almost sent him even further back. And now Phillips is going to scrape the outside wall. 2 trucks battling for the lead with 10 seconds between them and anyone else on the speedway here tonight. Closing in on 30 laps to go. A little bit further back, Dickerson once again trying to put the pressure down on that 29 of Kevin Church. And again, falling back just a little bit, trying to make that inside line work for him. I'll tell you what, he is nothing if not committed in that number 69 Angelman Syndrome Foundation entry. He is going to be trying the outside line, though. He's got it all the way up in the marbles, and he doesn't scrape the wall, though. He really sent that truck as close to the wall as he could manage to get it. Trying to do everything in his power to get on up there. Let's actually take a minute to ride on board with the 69 of Larry Dickerson here. Get a little bit of a view of what these drivers have going down there on this speedway. Riding on board with the 69 of Larry Dickerson, the driver in 4th place, the last driver on the lead lap. Trying to make something work for him here tonight, and it looks like the 2 of them have caught up to lap traffic. That's Brent Mex and Gerard Lawrence just in front of them. That is going to make Church's ability to hold Dickerson off a whole lot more difficult here tonight, race fans. And both drivers going to get around Brent Mex pretty handily. That's going to leave Gerard Lawrence that they have to contend with. Gerard Lawrence he does have a little bit of room. There's still a little bit of breathing room to play with for the driver of that snap-on number 27, but these two trucks are barreling on down behind them, and as we cross the line and get ready to go to 25 laps left to go, Lawrence needs to get up high out of the way, or he might just risk getting run over. That said, speaking of battles and trucks potentially running over each other, the battle for the lead hitting up. Kenny Tripp tried to make a move on our race leader. Did not quite work out, but he's going to be trying to set up one again here tonight. Again, not going to work, and he's going to fall back just a little bit. And again, Dickerson now trying the same thing. Two battles going on simultaneously for the top four trucks. 10 seconds apart on the speedway. Phillips and Tripp, Church and Dickerson. These two trucks throwing everything they've got at each other for these remaining 25 laps, and the gap is nearly identical between Phillips and Tripp, our race leaders, and Church and Dickerson for P number 3. Tripp again trying to get down low in that number 12 machine, get something to stick down there on the low line. Not quite working it out how he wants it to, and he nearly puts the bumper there to Phillips. Maybe trying to break out a little bit of that short track style, and you put the chrome horn to use. He's going to dive it down low again, and he nudges the race leader. Both of them are around. Tripp's down on the grass. Phillips is not in the grass, and that's going to bring out caution number 2 for the evening here tonight. Phillips still in the lead of this race in that number 5. But Tripp, he is all the way back. Well, he's still in P number 2. He was able to get the truck rolling again before Church and Dickerson could catch back up. But a yellow with 22 to go is really going to shake up the field here tonight. Kiger, Lawrence, and McMahon are going to be getting put back on the lead lap here. And now it's going to be a 7-truck battle for these last 22 laps. And sure enough, looks like pretty much everyone is going to be coming down pit lane under this caution to just put on fresh Goodyear tires, get the last little splash of fuel they need, and get ready to push these trucks with every last little ounce that they can to try and take home the win here tonight. I said, before we get too into things here, let's take a look back and see what all happened to Kenny Tripp to bring out that caution. You can see him there in that number 12 heading down into turn number 1, trying to make the pass down on the low side on our race leader. Just sent it a little bit too hard, and that's going to cause Johnny B to go around as well. He has to slam on the brakes to avoid those two. Let's take a ride on board with Johnny B and see what exactly he saw there heading into that whole incident. Gonna break out the onboard camera here, the helmet cam for Mr. Johnny B as he heads down into that incident. Sees the two leaders heading on by past him, and he just has to slam on the brakes to avoid collecting the 12. All things considered, looks like the 12 was the only driver that actually picked up any sort of damage from that incident. But either way, some of these drivers currently rejoicing what just happened. The rest of them gonna be really unhappy with how this race has come out. Let's take one last look back at that. Kenny Tripp just sending it a little bit harder than maybe he intends to. Phillips managing to hang on to it. But that yellow is going to be bunching up this field, putting 3 more drivers on the lead lap of tonight's race. And it's going to make these last 20 laps significantly more difficult for our race leader. So trucks now getting the wave around. Looks like it's going to be Gerard Lawrence, Dwayne McMahon, and Brandon Kiger going to be the 3 getting the wave around, getting put back on the lead lap. Going to be calling this a 7-truck shootout for these remaining, depending on when we go green, could be 18 laps, might even be 17. Oh, nope, lights out on the iRacing.com pace truck, and they're back on. Race control has called off the start, so it does look like we will be 17 to go when we go green flag racing again. Ross Phillips, still your race leader. Kevin Church, Larry Dickerson, now 2nd and 3rd. Kenny Tripp is back in the 6th position. Kenny Tripp looks like he might have gotten a pit lane violation. To have lost that many spots, I think Tripp might have had an oopsie down on pit lane. Let's actually take a quick look down at the strategy box real quick. Let me check when Tripp made his 2nd stop. Yep, sure enough, Tripp has a pit lane violation. He had to come down pit lane again, so that's going to bump Tripp all the way back to the 6th position when he was battling for the lead. Not the first time we have seen the driver, that number 12, have difficulties down on pit lane, but will he be able to recover? iRacing.com pace truck is off. Going to be calling it about, looks like actually a 16-lap shootout. Green flag up in the air. We are rolling here again at Indianapolis. 16 laps to go. Ross Phillips, Kevin Church. And it looks like someone's down on power. That's the 89 of Justin Phipps. Looks like his engine might have exploded on the restart. Definitely not. He's still rolling. Maybe I just don't know what a truck engine exploding sounds like, but it certainly sounded to me like someone had an engine failure, but everyone's still rolling and there's no caution, so I guess I'm just going insane up here in the booth here tonight. Trouble. Larry Dickerson really loose off the corner. That's going to allow Brandon Kiger to head down low. Kiger now battling his way into the top 3. Side by side, coming across the finish line. A little bit of contact between the two of them. Contact again. These two are really duking it out here. And Kenny Tripp is sending it all the way down. And Brandon Kiger is going around. Kiger is around. 3rd caution of the evening for the driver of the number 85. You know what they say, race fans? Cautions breed cautions. And every opportunity, especially in these final 15 laps to make a pass, these drivers are going to push for it with every opportunity they get. Again, our timing and scoring, though, this caution is not going to be putting any more drivers on the lead lap. Mex will get a lap back. Johnny B will get a lap back, and Phipps will get a lap back, but it will not be enough to put any of these 3 back onto the lead lap. So, gonna rack them all back up and try this thing again. Does not look like anyone is going to come down in pit lane. They are all satisfied with the work they had done under that previous caution. So let's take a look back and see what brought out the 3rd caution of the evening. Look down at that orange 85, that orange Busch Beer entry, heading down into turns 1 and 2 side by side with the 69. And just a little bit of a nudge was enough to get him unsettled, and then another one sealed the deal. No damage for Kiger, though. No contact with any other trucks or with the outside wall, so Kiger's going to be able to keep it rolling, and looks like all is good. Before we get another replay of that, though, Larry Dickerson is coming down pit lane. Dickerson, one of the trucks involved in that caution, gonna be pulling it down to the pits. Is he going to be taking tires? Looks like the answer is no. Dickerson is not taking tires. And with us being on, he's been on pit lane for 15 seconds now, which does not sound like a lot, but this is more than he should be down there for fuel. 22 seconds now. 25. There's something wrong with that number 69. He's got it rolling again, but he might just be serving a penalty, because that's going to have him all the way back down to 7th. So it's trouble for Dickerson. That is going to be making the end of this race much more difficult for him. Before we go green flag racing again, let's take one more quick look back at this incident that brought out the yellow. I just wanted to take a second to comment on that. Side by side, Dickerson up into the outside wall, tries to bring it back down, and just a little bit of a nudge, and then just a little bit of a case of not lifting through the corner, really just trying to push for every position. Right on board here with Dickerson, heading up, scraping the outside wall just a bit, turning down, trying to get it rolling again. And at that point, looks like Kiger was more or less sealed to his fate here tonight. But Phillips still our race leader. Church back in position number 2. Then it looks like it's going to be Gerard Lawrence and Kenny Tripp making up row number 2. Then Kiger and McMahon for row number 3. Lights are off on the iRacing.com pace truck, so we will be going green again next time by for what is going to be less than 10 laps. I think we're going to be 8 to go when we go green flag racing again. These drivers are about to throw every last little trick they have up their sleeves at each other for 8 more laps in Indianapolis. Green flag up in the air. Let's try this one more time. 3 wide, heading down in turn number 1. And Lawrence, hard impact with the outside wall right off the bat. Everyone's still rolling, and McMahon getting loose off the corner. A little bit of contact between McMahon and Dickerson. McMahon stuck way down on the apron now in that 87. He's battling to get into the top 5. He's falling back though. Dickerson going to be able to make the pass. But Lawrence up in the outside wall. Dickerson also up in the outside wall. That's going to bunch up this backpack even further. Phillips off to a pretty considerable lead. Tripp and Church duking it out for P number 2. Kiger is there as well. He wants to get into this podium battle as well. And Kiger is going to give a little bit of a nudge to Tripp. Just a little bit, and Kiger up into the outside wall now. These drivers really pushing their trucks as hard as they can, and you can see it. They're pretty much hitting the wall out of every single corner, and sometimes in the middle of the corners as well. Dickerson now trying to see if he can't get a move on Lawrence to get back up into the top 5 here tonight. He's going to be trying to send it down low, and it looks like side by side coming out of turn number 2, side by side heading down in 3. They make contact. Lawrence again into the outside wall in that 27. That's now the 3rd hard impact that Lawrence has had with a wall in these past couple laps since this restart. And back here up in the front, Phillips is pretty much checking out, but Church, Tripp, and Kiger, these 3 are still nose to tail. 4 laps to go in this battle for the podium. 3 to go, crossing the line. The clock is ticking. Tripp now looking up to the high side to try and get around Church. Kiger is down there as well. He's looking down on the low side. Another bit of a scrape against the outside wall. Kiger is falling back. Now it is Church and Tripp. 2 laps left to go. If Phillips manages to cross the line, we will be staying green, but if a wreck happens before he gets there, we will have another overtime attempt. And Tripp sending it in deep there, not committing to it. He doesn't give the bump to that 29. White flag up in the air. It all comes down to this one more time around the speedway, and Tripp is drifting it through the corner. That's going to lose all of the ground he made up on Church, and now Kiger has an opportunity to get into the top 3. He just has to get around that 12. He sends it down low. Kiger and Tripp side by side through the corner, and they're going to make contact, trip up in the outside wall. And Kiger is going to take home P number 3, trip backwards across the line, and he's going to get slam dunked by that 89 of Justin Phipps. But it's going to be Ross Phillips that takes home the win here tonight in that number 5 Chevrolet. I'll tell you what, cautions breed cautions, and I don't think anyone was expecting this race to play out exactly how it did. But Phillips is going to take home the win in that number 5 Casey's General Store Chevrolet. I said, don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers here tonight. Alrighty, race fans, and welcome back to the Lucas Oil Speedway, Indianapolis Raceway Park. And up with here with me, it's the number 5, Mr. Ross Phillips, the driver that led pretty much every single lap here tonight. What a chaotic end to the race this was, but you got it done here this evening. How are you feeling?
Feeling wise, sick. I feel like crap. Race wise, pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, you got a little bit something good going for you. Got the positivity of getting a win under your belt to offset the sickness, and 150 laps is no easy feat, so getting a win to your name while sick is just making it all that more impressive. I'll tell you what were you thinking when those last couple of cautions came out in the last 20 laps of tonight's race?
The first caution that came out, I think that was the one that I was involved with, right? I think Trippy or Timpy, whatever his name is, got into me in the back. That was just kind of a racing deal. I mean, he run me down from 7 seconds. If it would have been a clean thing, he'd have walked away with this thing. But that second caution, I think, which was the last one, kind of scared me a little bit. But I was like, I'll just get back to driving this thing hard.
One way or another, you managed to make it work here tonight in that number 5 machine. And I'll tell you what, IRP, quite the different track from Daytona. But next week, heading into a nice little in-between spot. We are heading to Texas. How you feeling about going to one of the so-called cookie cutter tracks out there? Is that one you
I
got any particular thoughts about?
I excel at your mile and a halfs. So I believe it or not, I've never turned a lap here. I just got this place right before the session. I completely forgot we were here. I've had no practice, nothing. So got lucky.
Well, in short track racing, there's always a little bit of chaos, and with a little bit of chaos comes a little bit of luck. But I like the confidence heading into one of the intermediate tracks next week. I feel like you might just be able to get up here in the broadcasting booth next week. I'm not gonna jinx it though, but you sound confident about that, so I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah, no jinxes, but I excel. I'm a mile and a half. So I'm the Denny Hamlin a mile and a half. So yep.
That sounds like a good plan then. Of course, before I let you go and celebrate getting a win to your name in a track that you haven't even practiced for, and of course, let you go and actually recover from being sick, is there anyone on the side of that number 5 machine you like to thank for getting you up here?
Just the team, Midwest Mafia. Obviously Matt and you guys for putting this thing on, and you for broadcasting this thing. So
Good deal. Well, congratulations on the win, and I look forward to
appreciate it.
seeing you next week.
All right, buddy.
And finishing back in P number 2, that blue and white number 29, it's Mr. Kevin Church. Kevin, what a heck of a race it has been, but you've brought it home on the podium. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done here tonight?
Feeling pretty good. That was a tough race. That's a tough track. It was a good race, though. It's hard to keep the tires from wearing out, but it was a real good race.
Yeah, it was quite the event and pretty much exactly as chaotic as I expected a short track to be. It just tends to work out that way. What do you think you might have had to have done differently to take home a win here this evening, though?
Oh, I'm not sure. There's a 3 or 4 guys that were pretty quick. 27, Gerard, he was pretty quick. I got into him a little bit. Didn't mean to. We were 3 wide. Uh, I hate that happened, but uh, I don't know. There's some fast guys there.
Yeah, y'all all have been putting on some pretty dang competitive races so far this season, and I don't know about you, but I am really excited for what's left to come. Looks like next week gonna be heading to Texas Motor Speedway, one of the intermediate tracks. How are you feeling heading on over to one of the so-called cookie cutter tracks on the schedule here tonight?
I like Texas. It's a good track. It's fast, but you still have to take care of your stuff, and it'll be a good race, I think.
Well, sounds like a pretty good plan so far. Everyone we've talked to is looking forward to it, and that's always a great thing to hear. Of course, before I let you celebrate getting another podium to your name, though, microphone's all yours. Who do you want to thank for getting you up here tonight?
I just want to thank Shane Matt for putting this deal on, and thank you for broadcasting it. And thanks to all these guys showing up and racing. It was a good time.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you at Texas next week.
All right, thanks, man.
And bringing it home, P number 3, a driver that anyone who has tuned into this broadcast regularly for the past 12 weeks or so should know by now. Mr. Brandon Kiger, you're up here on the podium yet again, but this time it's not in a late model. How are you feeling here tonight?
Uh, Tired after that one. That was a tough race. Really tight track. Caught truck just really tight, really fast, and really hate I done that to Kenny. I didn't mean to get into him there off 4 coming to the line, but that's a product of this track, how it races.
Yeah, it was definitely a difficult event here tonight. Pretty much every single truck out here on the speedway has damage to the right side in some capacity, so a little bit of contact I think is to be expected, especially with this being one of the shortest tracks on the schedule. That said, what do you think you might have had to have done differently to potentially get around Kevin or maybe even take home the win here tonight?
I really don't know. I struggle at this track and anything we get in. Some people just have a knack for it, and I don't. It's a hard place to get used to. I was fast in practice, thought we was going to be all right, and was riding around and thought we was saving tires, but we did not. It eat them up out there tonight.
Fair enough. Well, we've conquered the high banks of Daytona. We've brought it down to IRP for a little bit of short track action. And next week, we head on over to Texas for one of the intermediate races this season. How you feeling going to a track that has a little bit more breathing room than this one?
Well, I like Texas, good track, but it's just going to be a lot of pack race, pretty much just like Daytona in these trucks. You can't pull away from nobody. It's very hard because the draft is pretty key there, and saving tires is going to be key there. It's going to be a lot of good guys in here I see from just this race, so it's going to be a tough one to hang on to.
Well, either way, I think it's bound to be a fun one. I give it 2 out of 3 votes from the folks we've talked to who are excited for next week's race. So hopefully everything will go well. And of course, I look forward to seeing all you competing at it. But for right now, you got another podium to your name. The microphone's all yours, Mr. Kiger. Who do you want to thank for getting you up here?
Oh, well, nobody but me again tonight. We're just keeping it solo, but I'd like to thank Matt for putting it on, him and Steven, and you for doing the broadcast. And hope Kenny ain't too mad at me. I apologize to him again. I really hate doing that because he's a good, clean driver. I don't want to ever ruffle feathers with him. He's a good dude.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
All right, so heard from your top 3 finishers here tonight: Ross Phillips, Kevin Church, Brandon Kiger, taking home the podium here tonight. But they ain't the only drivers out here in this race. Following them here this evening, going to be the 12 of Kenny Tripp for Fast Track Motorsports 2, a driver that we have seen battling it out with Brandon Kiger pretty much all season long, both here in the Truck Series and in the Wednesday Night Late Medal Series. Kenny Tripp gonna be running it in back in P number 4. 5th place gonna go back to that 69 of Larry Dickerson with Gerard Lawrence in the 27, bringing it home P number 6. 7th gonna go back to that rookie. That is the 87 of Dwayne McMahon with Brent Mex in the 6, bringing it home P number 8. 9th, going to go back to the Satellite Munitions Motorsports driver, the 66 of Mr. Johnny B, with Justin Phipps in the 89, rounding out the top 10 here tonight. 11th, going to go back to last week's winner. That is the 83 of Michael McElroy, maybe not having the race that he wanted in that crew racing entry, followed by Art Hendren in the 37, and finally the 82 of Zach Scare, rounding out that 13-car field here tonight. Next week, it's like we said during the interviews, heading on down to Texas Motor Speedway, an intermediate track coming in about 1.5 miles in length. We call it intermediate because that is about the average length of a NASCAR track. So 3 weeks of racing, 3 entirely different styles of oval racing coming into play. And I'll tell you what, we've seen 3 drivers that were completely different from last week's podium on the podium here tonight. And somehow I have a feeling we're going to seeing an entire brand new set of 3 drivers on the podium next week. But for now, that's all we've got here in Indianapolis at the Lucas Oil Raceway. A big thank you from me and from everyone at the Enigma Truck Racing Series for tuning in to tonight's broadcast and supporting the league. And of course, ETRS is open to new drivers. You are welcome to join whenever you want. Just got to apply to iRacing League 9357. There is a $15 entry fee, but that goes towards cash prizes for the championship as well as trophies and other things like that. So if you want to join on in to the Enigma Truck Racing Series, be sure to check out that iRacing League, and maybe we'll just see y'all out here on the Speedway at some point. But for now, thank you all for tuning in, race fans, and I look forward to seeing you all next week at Texas. Have a good evening, race fans.